Hello, and welcome back. This is, of course, part 3 of our 7 video series talking about the Seoul Cyber Conference 2013 happening here in South Korea on the 16th, 17th, and 18th of October at the COEX Mall. This is the second theme. Today we're going to talk about social and cultural benefits, of course, of the internet, cyberspace itself. And like last time, we're going to start here with their definition of this term so we know exactly what they're talking about and how we can address this. Social media in cyberspace, including social network services, are replacing the role of traditional mass media, such as broadcasts and newspapers, empowering users with greater access to information, freedom of expression, and participation in the public policy-making process. Internet users are becoming the main actors in cyberspace rather than remaining a passive consumer. With open access to the internet, anyone can share cultural contents with the world and trigger the global audience's empathy, the basis for mutual understanding. In this regard, it is important to identify how to promote social and cultural benefits and fundamental values such as openness, trust, transparency, and human rights. The objectives, of course, are to identify the social and cultural benefits of cyberspace, as well as the basic principles that can promote such benefits as freedom and confidence. I'm assuming it's such as freedom and confidence. Alrighty. Like last time, there's a list of questions here, but first let's address some things we're talking about here. Social media replacing traditional mass media and information. There's actually a very recent incident, recent relatively speaking. Remember the crash that happened? The Asiana flight that crashed at San Francisco airport?
Yes.
Do you know where I first got word of that?
At the in-laws' house, on the TV.
No, it was actually on Twitter.
Oh.
It was actually on Twitter. My Twitter was blowing up. I have a couple people on my Twitter that are from San Francisco. And just started blowing up, talking about a plane crash to San Francisco. I'm like, what? It was an Asiana flight. I'm like, oh, that's odd. I go to all newspaper websites, Chosen Ilbo, Korean Times, nothing. Go to Asiana's website, nothing. I go to KBS, SBS website, nothing. Then I just kept on getting updates. Fire trucks are on the scene. There appears to be several injuries, but they don't know about casualties yet. All these updates were happening there on my Twitter feed long before I saw the first news broadcast about it, which was hours later when we were with the family. Yeah. It kind of shows how quickly the internet has leaped past traditional media. Before people write their stories, we have no access until you saw the newspaper. The newspaper maybe was written 2 days earlier, then just printed 24 hours earlier, and then it arrives at your doorstep. You have to walk all the way into town to get it. Those times have long since passed to the point where social media sites have actually allowing us to get access to information quicker and faster than you can get from traditional media. This could really change how we cover a lot of things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I do agree with that assessment. I do agree that it's more, I can say it, the social networking sites as a way of reporting news is definitely quicker, and I would argue more efficient, but there is a danger there that it might be incorrect. There's no avenue for accountability. We saw some of this stuff, such as in the Gaza attack a while back. There was a lot of people sending out photos of atrocities that Israeli soldiers were committing, and later newspapers were reporting on them after the fact, and then finding out later that a lot of that actually wasn't true. It was people trying to drum up sympathy for Hezbollah on the other side. Yeah. I'm not here to make accusations on either side of the conflict. I'm just saying that historically speaking, we have seen how this can be abused.
Very much so. Very much so.
So I'm not quite ready to declare it as completely superior to traditional mass media, but it is more efficient.
Yes.
Definitely more efficient. So let's get into some of these questions. The first one is, the social and cultural benefits of cyberspace include greater participation in the policymaking process and expanding social networks, culture exchange, e-health, and e-learning initiatives. What other benefits can we expect?
Again, I'm more on the dark side of things, and I feel like there's more bad things than benefits we'll get ever out of the internet.
Anyone who's been on the internet knows long enough that the internet is basically boiled down to cat videos, pornography, and people saying,
Fake and gay.
fake and gay, show me your boobs, and what's another internet thing? Pixar didn't happen.
Yeah.
Pixar didn't happen. The internet is an awful place. The internet is a man's ability to express itself freely, and I think none of us were prepared for how awful people can become when they're allowed to freely say whatever they want without any fear of retribution. As much as a support I am of free speech with anonymity equals rather compromising pictures of cartoons.
And not to mention, it just goes to show what limited vocabulary most people have and how absolutely horrible spelling and grammar is. I'm willing to talk. My grammar's the goodest. I mean, it's pretty bad. So, but still, yeah,
Badly.
It's badly. It's just like looking at something like just how people just talk to each other on the internet. How like just like the websites like Wikipedia, how you can pretty much write whatever the heck you want and lie about it. Like, even the wording for some of those things is like I'm very disappointed.
Very disappointed. So when it says talks here about benefits we can get from it, I'm always quick to kind of bite my tongue. Good things that can come from the internet? I think there are some, yes.
Oh, definitely. It's just sometimes it's hard to see the good things.
Exactly.
It's filled with all the crap from the bad people.
Yes, all them trolls out there. Okay, so let's talk about someone they already talked about. Participation in policymaking process. Obviously, if there's an issue out there, people can express themselves. My concern is that not everyone is part of these social networking sites. Not everyone is participating. So oftentimes we'll have a very loud minority and make it look like people are feeling a certain way about an issue. The website IGN always points out that for every 200,000 views a particular article will get, there's only about 200 comments. So only about 1/1000th of the people that are viewing content are actually providing feedback, and people are far more likely to report negative feedback than positive. Just look at the elections. Wow. So
I was just gonna touch on the fact that like one of the benefits I just thought of was it does help us communicate better and like keep in touch with certain people. Like there's certain social networks that help you keep in touch with people even though you're gone. Like we're over in Korea and our family's back in the States, so it's using the internet helps to communicate with them.
Well, like recently, the current Park Geun-hye administration was talking about trying to set up more meetings between family members on the both sides of the North-South Korea border. Information technology actually could help in that aspect a lot. Before, it was very expensive and you had to run long wires and everything, and it just wasn't very efficient. And with the increase in the internet, obviously, internet infrastructure isn't very well out there, but that could be a very helpful tool in those situations. And we've already seen how it can help things like soldiers deployed overseas, or family members who have to do business trips in other countries, and just the ability to, like you said, keep in touch is a great benefit that can come from these sort of things. The cultural exchange. We'll talk about this a little later, but I think out of all the possible benefits, one that I've had the most experience with is the ability of cultural exchange, especially someone who's very obsessed with history and culture in general. Mm-hmm. But for other benefits, it's hard to say at the moment. I would like to think that these things can help reinforce institutions we already have. Something as simple as Samsung wants to put out a new product, but they're not sure exactly how certain features are going to be accepted. Just putting out, okay, this is what we're thinking. Here's some different options. What do you guys think? And just getting a solid feedback from people, I think, could really be a benefit. How can we best utilize such assets as social capital? Again, that's hard. A lot of people can be rallied behind causes on the internet, but normally it's based on misinformation that they're willing to rally, or
I always feel like an idiot when I say something and I realize I was misinformed. That's why I'm very, very careful with what I say. But I do notice that through Facebook, Twitter, whatever. On the internet, you'll see people who rally behind an article and spread it around. I can't believe this is happening. Well, I can understand why you can't believe it, because it isn't happening.
Yes.
Or it isn't happening to that degree.
Yes.
So, I mean,
there's a lot of ways to be misinformed on the internet. A very, very near and dear to the heart of a lot of people here in South Korea, the Mad Beef, the whole Mad Beef incident. You weren't here during that. In 2008, there was a huge scare over American beef being tainted with mad cow disease, and there was a ban put on American beef and all sorts of crazy stuff. Well, North American would be a more accurate term, and it was in Canada. But people rallied in the streets. People were attacking Americans. We actually had a soldier get kidnapped and beaten and tortured, all sorts of crazy stuff over misinformation. People had candlelight vigils and protests against American products. People trashing stores that carried American products. It got bad. People demanding that the president resign for wanting to resume import of American beef. It got really bad over misinformation. So I think that people can be rallied in negative ways very easily. So we have to be careful. Yeah.
That's like me not liking Psy and then coming over here and beating up a bunch of random South Koreans. Your music sucks. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, to be more accurate, that'd be like you not liking Kim Jong-il. So you come here and beat up South Koreans.
Yeah, that'd make more sense.
Yeah.
That makes me confused.
Yes. But that same momentum, that same passion could be used constructively. We were talking before about things such as in 2005 there was, of course, Hurricane Katrina. It was an awful disaster, natural disaster that happened in Louisiana in the United States. It was devastating. Information was awful. The government not keeping people informed what was going on. The government not knowing what was going on half the time. People not being able to communicate to the government. They didn't know where people were, how to get aid. They didn't know how to help. I think information technology can help with that. We saw in the tornadoes that happened more recently, people twittering and people on Facebook saying, "Okay, this is the place that the tornado touched down. Make sure to avoid this area. This place is confirmed as safe. Hey, people, come over here. Hey, police, I just saw a house over here that was hit. Can you send somebody to make sure they're okay?" It was amazing. We kind of saw social media in action being used in a positive light.
I've noticed that it's refreshing and at the same time very depressing to see that the one time where the internet kind of comes together and there obviously still a few people, but the trolling kind of dies down. That usually happens because of the disaster. Yeah. I mean, the earthquake in Japan.
Yes.
I mean, just.
People raising awareness, people raising funds. Yeah.
Same thing for earthquake in Hades. I mean, it's the same thing. And it makes me kind of happy to see that we can, for a second, put our lives on hold, for a second, stop hating each other, just to try to, work together. It also makes me sad that we only tend to do that when a disaster happens.
So what we're saying is people can be mobilized and have been mobilized through the internet. But it's a tool that can be used both for good and evil. So the most important thing is finding constructive ways to motivate people. Moving on to the next one. What are the specific challenges that threaten to undermine social and cultural benefits in cyberspace? I think the first big one we were touched on, the fact that people are just jerks.
Yeah. Really, there's no other way to put it.
People are just jerks. And spreading misinformation has no negative recourse in most terms. South Korea actually has a lot of very interesting libel laws. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the States that would flip out over here and stuff like this. But for me, I'm still creating an opinion, but I'm starting to lean a little on the South Korea side. If you write a news article or you post about something on Twitter or Facebook that is incorrect, and after a police investigation shows that's incorrect, you're actually accountable for libel. You can be sued, you can be fined, you can be forced to write an apology, if you write something that's incorrect or false. And there's always ways around it, especially with newspapers, who will print something and then say, oh, we are just reporting what we heard. That's freedom of the press. And so there's a lot of newspapers that get away with printing a lot of BS. But just the fact that South Korea is trying to make laws to keep people accountable, I think, of course, there's always going to be the other side. There's a lot of internet freedom groups that have actually put South Korea very low on the list of internet freedom because of laws like that, and say things like, South Korea is just a bad North Korea. No, it's not. But again, if you leave people to say absolutely whatever they want, especially under the wall of anonymity, they'll be more prone to hyperbole, to just making up stuff, to saying whatever the heck they want because they know they're not accountable to it.
How are they cracking the whip here? Because you could, if like a sports team, and you get on and say, oh my goodness, the guy broke his ankle, he's out, he's gonna miss the entire season. You find out, no, it's a mild sprain, he's gonna miss like 2 games.
Nah.
Something like that. I mean, like.
Now, this is a long time ago. This is before she was even a political candidate. The current president, this was a couple years ago, a newspaper, or actually I think it was a blogger, claimed that she spent $10,000 a year on cosmetics and plastic surgery, which is a lot of money. And she said, no, that's not true. Police investigated. It wasn't true. That guy had to write an apology.
That makes sense. I mean, obviously, how bad it could be, the fine and the suing might be a little much, but yeah.
There is the possibility for abuse. So I think that's also equally important, is that people who are going to be affected, that's going to be like regular citizens, they make sure policymakers, when they make these policies, put in very specific language and use very detailed kind of laws when constructing this. If you leave it too open, there's a lot of ways you can abuse that, obviously. Especially if it...
People always try to find loopholes.
Yes, they always try to find loopholes. Okay, but again, I just think human nature is going to undermine a lot of these benefits, but also political propaganda. North Korea is very famous for, especially during election season, posting a lot of misinformation on the internet and trying to rally people up and stuff like that. Stuff like that can also undermine it. There's always going to be someone who benefits from misinformation.
Yeah.
So you always have to be on the lookout for that. I think important thing again for the government to do is try to counter misinformation with correct information. People might not believe it, because people are people, but just try to keep on top of stuff like that. How can we pursue fundamental values such as freedom and security simultaneously in a way that enhances the social and cultural benefits from the internet? Now, we also talked a bit about this earlier. There's always going to be different people that have different interpretations of freedom and different interpretations of security, and we have to be very careful here. A great example would be China. Being a one-party state, they, meaning the government, not regular Chinese. I'm sure the average Chinese girl probably doesn't think this way, but for the government itself, they consider the party and the state almost synonymous. To borrow a phrase from Caesar, I am the state. And because of that, anything that's considered a threat to the party, they're going to consider a threat to the nation, and therefore a security risk. Just type in Tiananmen Square, it's blocked there. So, of course, there's always a counter to that. There's always groups that are searching for internet freedom who don't have the best interests of people in mind and have very misconstrued views of what freedom is. And we saw stuff like this with WikiLeaks, where things such as very important secret dialogues that were happening between the U.S. and China and Japan and South Korea to try to deal with the North Korean issue on a level that, on a less visible level, all those were made public. And obviously that didn't benefit anyone except for North Korea. North Korea know that China was working behind their back. That didn't benefit any civilian. That didn't benefit the group that leaked it. That
didn't benefit China or the United States at all.
Yeah. So saying, people have a right to know, your idea of absolute freedom, everyone needs to know everything, might not actually be to the benefit of anyone. If everyone could read each other's minds, no one would hang out with anyone ever.
I would have no friends.
But again, these are just my views and my perspective of the ideas of security and freedom. And that's an important issue that needs to be talked about here, is how do we define these? Where do we define these? There's always going to be this issue, especially, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin that talked about those who, in the name of security, that give up freedom will have neither. We always have to be very careful on how we define security and exactly what locks we put there, because there's always the chance that those can be abused. But also vice versa, the people that are claiming to work on the side of freedom might not exactly have people's best interests in mind. Example we were talking about earlier. Again, I relate a lot of things to video games or media because that's my background. The Sony's PlayStation Network was hacked. This was a couple years ago. So this was 2011. It was hacked by no one knows, but they claim to be the internet activist group Anonymous. Not a big fan of you guys. They claim that the reason they did that is because Sony took away the ability to upload other operating systems such as Linux onto the PlayStation 3. The reason why Sony did this is because a lot of people were abusing that to the point where they were trying to work around security loopholes, that they were illegally downloading software, doing dangerous things to the PlayStation Network, and Sony thought it was in the best interest for the consumer base as a whole to put an end to that. Me, as one of the consumers, I agreed with their decision, I supported their decision, and I do not feel any freer or safer just because Anonymous attacked them. In fact, I feel more vulnerable, and I feel like my voice or my opinion wasn't heard or respected in that issue. They kind of took it on themselves. So there's going to be different opinions on freedom and security, and I think it's very important that we try not to make it too binary. What are the roles of various stakeholders in sharing social and cultural benefits, such as overcoming the digital divide, promoting accessibility, and creating mature cyberspace culture? We both got in touch with this before. I could never, just having experienced the internet the way I have, I can never see a mature cyberspace culture ever developing.
But at the same time, it's a mature, I mean, that word right there puts you at a place where you'll never win, because I don't think we'll ever see a mature society. We'll never see a mature organization. I mean, no matter what we do, there's going to be the group of people in certain places like the internet, the majority of these people, who are very, very immature.
Yes.
So I think mature may not be the correct word to use here, but I feel like with technology and everything, the way we're going, like even just YouTube comments, if you dislike a comment enough, you no longer have to see it. So like, they get rid of that troll, you know what I mean? So slowly, I feel like we could get closer to the goal. I don't think we'll ever achieve it because of how immature people are.
People are awful.
Yeah.
I agree, but there are ways to get cultural benefits from this. I was telling you before, the idea of soft power. Now, of course, soft power, as you know, is originally defined, and it talked a lot about at a state level. I'm talking about at a smaller level. Let's talk about here at the propagation of media and ideas. A poll of Americans, but this was. I'm gonna get these dates wrong, so someone's gonna yell at me over there on the internet. I believe it was 2009. A poll of Americans showed that only 45% was willing to back South Korea if they went to war. A whopping 55% either didn't want to back South Korea at all or did not have an opinion on it. That's pretty disastrous considering how important a strategic ally they are and the long history they have together, the economical, the military aspect. It's sad, but it's because most Americans didn't know what the heck South Korea was.
Yeah, when I was coming over here, I was telling some friends, okay, this is obviously 2013. So through the spring of 2013, I was, telling people, hey, I'm going to go over to Korea, and a very sad amount of people expressed, why are you going over to Korea? They hate us. And of course, I had explained to them that there's North and South. Oh, which one are you going to?
I'm going to the one that kidnapped the American. Yeah, I'm going to go there so I can be kidnapped too. Yeah, so it's bad news. Bad news all around. Most Americans were very ignorant about South Korea, especially the history of the alliance. Well, fast forward here to very recently, last year, they did a similar poll. This, of course, was after the craze of Gangnam Style. After Gangnam Style really took off. And I don't know if it's part of that. I also put some of the credit to the media covering about North Korea more and talking about their nuclear program and the threats they're making against U.S. more. But that number jumped up to 68%. Over 2/3 now were willing to support South Korea against North Korea. That's mind-boggling. That's mind-boggling for such a short period of time. And all because people actually knew what the heck South Korea was for a change. And I think that is something that the internet can provide. When I first got here, there was some cultural aspects I couldn't quite understand. And of course, I hadn't learned the language yet. I'm still trying to learn the language. Through YouTube and through places like Talk to Me in Korean, I just started hearing from Koreans and from Americans who have been here in Korea a long time through blogs, just people's experiences and people's understanding, people's knowledge. And very quickly, things that I thought were odd or I didn't quite grasp, I immediately started to take in. And of course, you've been benefiting from being able to live with me, but I mean, you took things very quickly. And I think that's where the internet can really help. And where it can work as an idea of security is... Right now, if the U.S. were to go to war with Japan, most Americans would probably be pretty upset. Most Americans have a very positive view of Japan.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Whether it's because of, animation, Miyazaki, Pokemon, whether it's through other cultural aspects, sushi. Everyone eats sushi in America, or has had it before.
I would say not everyone likes it. Everyone's like, oh, raw fish, gross.
But everyone knows what sushi is.
Everyone knows.
Through products, everyone has had or has had a Sony TV, and it's most Americans could never put their head around going to war with Japan because they have a positive idea of Japan, a positive view of Japan through Japanese culture and through Japanese products. People are slowly starting to get that way about South Korea. We even saw in Japan a lot of the anti-Korea protests, ones that used to be real gigantic back, let's say 2004. More recently, because of the Dokdo situation and everything, there are big pockets of it, but not nearly as big or not nearly the style or volume that was before, because a lot more of Japanese children and adults and just people in general listen to K-pop, watch Korean dramas, love Korean food, and vice versa too. A lot of Korean. One Piece. I have yet to meet a Korean male who does not read One Piece. This literally can help prevent wars. And I think this is something where the internet and the free market and the freedom to the market that the internet provides can be a great asset. And so I think this is one very in this video, on a more positive note, this is one very positive aspect I do see coming from the internet. There's always going to be trolls. There's always going to be awful people.
Yeah, but if you have like a safety, if you have like a safety thing on your computer for your search and everything, if you have a safety thing on and you're looking for something very specific, it can be very useful. It can be very informative. It can be very helpful.
Yes.
It can also be very creepy. So be careful what you Google.
But on that note, do you have anything to add from this, from your personal perspective?
No, I think we covered everything I feel about this.
Again, we got security questions coming eventually. I'll have a lot more to say about that. But this obviously is a topic that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. A lot of people have very different opinions on this, obviously. I want to hear your opinions. Put them in the comments below, make your own videos. And again, spread information about these issues.
Make sure it's the correct information.
Double check your sources. Double check your information. And of course, I say that right as I can't remember exact dates for things, so people are going to call me out bad. But at least I say I don't know. At least I'm sure. I'm pretty sure. I will double check that. I'll have to put some annotations here in the bottom. But again, share your own information. Share your own ideas. Get a dialogue going. And again, when you got some time in both English and Korean, you can find information at www.Seoul Cyber 2013, Seoul as in city, cyber as in cyber, and 2013 as in the year, .kr. And if you do kr/en, those automatically come up in English.